would constitute the same danger as the people of Gaza do, or the same kind of insoluble problem. We know now, looking at what they're doing in Gaza, that they would not hesitate to use any kind of means at their hands. I hope that it's also a sign that at least some of the leaders have some inhibitions which come from their inside, from their own moral constitution. I do hope so. We have a particularly corrupt leadership in Israel these days. I mean, I think one of the reasons ethnic cleansing is not going on so well is that the Israeli politicians are busy running from one court to the other to answer charges of corruption. They're much more busy meeting the lawyers than meeting their strategic advisors nowadays. Thank God. So we should keep it on. So the less they're doing politics, the less damage they're doing. But to be serious for a moment, I really think that there's always this danger. But there is a moment of opportunity to recruit enough public opinion outside to send them a message that the world would not continue the conspiracy of silence that characterized it in 1948. I hope I'm right in this.
Thanks again for speaking, Professor. I want to ask you a little bit further about the social construction of nationalism in nations that you mentioned earlier, and especially Jewish immigrants to Palestine that rejected the Zionist narrative and the history of Arab-Jewish cooperation that has existed, especially like in the 30s and 40s with the labor movement, and what that says about the present and possibilities for cooperation beyond just fighting over ethnic groups.
I think what it really says, it humanizes the picture for us, because Jews immigrated to Palestine for various reasons. As I said, some of them came to Palestine like my parents, because the United States closed their gates. My parents wanted to immigrate here. Not Irvine, I don't know, but supposedly. But they couldn't. My father's brother made it to New Zealand rather than to Palestine, because New Zealand opened its gates. So other people came because they really thought that they're coming to their homeland. Others came because they had trouble and so on. And this mess of human beings, when it was left by its own, not directed politically and ideologically from above, met a Palestinian society which has the same characteristic the Palestinian society has today. There was mainly a rural community that began immigration to the city because of the change of the economic system. Very hospitable, that received the Jewish immigrants as immigrants who needed a place to stay, needed some advice on how to cultivate the land, and basically as individuals did not constitute any threat. And when they worked with you in a factory, or when they worked with you as drivers in buses and trucks, and you both felt that the British government is not paying you the right amount of money, you went on to strike again. So the basic human instinct, even of immigrants and native population, by the fact that they're there together, is to share the country and live together, not to dream about expelling one another. But I think the lesson is that it's still possible for the future. But there's also something there that explains the magnitude of what the Israelis and the Zionist movement did in 1948. I'm thinking particularly of those villages like Itlit, Kir, Kamun, and many others, which in fact already in the 1920s invited Jews to live among them. Not many people know it, that quite a lot of Palestinian villages have had a number of Jewish families in them, including Tantura and many other villages. There were a few people who wanted to live there. And these families were then ordered by the Jewish agency to spearhead the ethnic cleansing of their hosts. This is the picture that for me is the strongest. I invite someone to my house, and this is the story of Palestine as a whole. I invite someone to my house because he's poor, because he's an immigrant, because he's thrown out from another country. And he uses the time to contemplate how to kick me out of the house. This is something that was an ideological project that individuals took part in, but if you will unpack this ideological project and bring a different ideology and morality into the picture, you will find these individuals capable of doing what they did when they first came, which is to live together and build a joint future.
Thank you for your enlightening talk, but I want to put a different spin on the discussion. The Arabs, and I say this as an Arab,
Right.
we've undermined the Palestinians, exacerbated the effects of the ethnic cleansing, and frankly, in many cases, facilitated ethnic cleansing inside of the Arab world and inside of Israel and Palestine. We can go back to 1948 and all the wars that followed and say that the Arabs were competing against one another with complete disregard to the Palestinians. And frankly, I think if they had succeeded in throwing the Jews out of Israel or defeating the Jews, they probably would have still continued killing each other for land, for territory. Now, looking at the not so distant history, in 1990, when Arafat supported Saddam Hussein in his attack on Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, after the war, the Gulf states squeezed the Palestinians and cut the funds. They had a personal issue with Arafat, but they ended up basically squeezing the entire Palestinian population and forced Arafat to sign a bogus agreement known as the Oslo Agreement, where he didn't negotiate Jerusalem, the borders, the refugees. It was a complete concession on the Palestinian part. My question to you is, looking at it structurally, what role do you think the Arabs could play in order to facilitate or contribute to this dream that you have of a one-state solution? Because, quite frankly, I'm disgusted with my own just as you are with your own. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I think one of the great success of political elites we should challenge is that we and they are the same. There are people who decided to be politicians and leaders and make regimes, and they don't necessarily represent us. So I think there is an open account with the Arab regime. There's no open account with the Arab world or with the Arab people. I mean, they did their bit, and had it not been for the Arab people, even the little bit that the Arab regimes did would not have happened. Secondly, I do agree with you that if you talk about the politics of many of the Arab countries, it was never very positive about the Palestine question. There was a lot of rhetoric, very little action. Quite often today, as in the past, the Palestine issue is being used to justify lack of action inside their own countries and dealing with their own problems. And quite often, the Israelis benefit from implicit policies of cooperation and collaboration of the Arab states. However, I think that it's very important to isolate the issues. And I'm not saying that there is nothing the Arab world should do and can do for Palestine, much more than it did. For sure it has to. And everyone has to do their share as much as we here in you here in the States have to do your share. But the one-state project or any closure or solution to the Palestine question has the advantage, because of its very unique historical circumstances, that it can become a reality even before most of the problems of the Arab world have been solved. I mean, I don't believe that you have to wait until the last issue on the problem of the agenda of problems of the Arab world is being solved. Only then you can hope for a solution for the Palestine question. I think it's given the size of the land, given what is at stake, it's a very small part of the land, of the world. There's still hope that we can do it before the Arab world stabilizes and people find the right